Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll be waiting a couple of minutes to start just to make sure that everyone can join us. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for attending. A few housekeeping rules. Please check your conferencing sound. We are using VoIP, so just in case, please make sure that your volume is turned up. Additionally, there's a question mark at the bottom of your screen if you need additional help topics. And we will be having a Q&A at the end of this session. So please submit your questions for the Q&A via the widget at the bottom. So thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Tip the Scale in Your Favor, Mastering Directory Listings. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. David Turner, Senior Director of Product Management at Neustar, Anne-Marie Medina, Director of Strategic Accounts, and Jennifer Marino, Manager of Professional Service Engagements. And now I'll turn it over to David Turner to get us started.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about directory listings, or more importantly, how are listings managed and paid for by a carrier. Today, Anne-Marie, Jen, and I are going to talk about key aspects of the listing process. DL represents a challenging part of the business with hidden costs and complexities everywhere. It does require a significant amount of experience and knowledge to manage listings, particularly complex business listings. Additionally, in the current business model, listings are a significant cost driver. So demand for directory listing info is thriving. And I'm going to say that again. Demand for directory listing info is thriving. And if you say that to most people, people have images of phone books, or they have images of calling 411. However, really, the listing process represents the ability to find or be found for a business or an individual. So really, the demand for search is thriving. And directory listings really represent the authoritative means of providing that information. But technology is rapidly changing. So there's been a long-time model for managing directory listings. In 40 states, carriers have petitioned PSCs for permission to no longer provide print or distribute white pages. And this is just an acknowledgement of the current reality. People are searching online. Mobile devices of all types have made search convenient, and they lack the lag time that printed books inherently have. But books are still being used by a number of consumers when searching businesses. For this reason, books remain table stakes for anyone providing service to businesses who cannot afford to not be found by up to 17% of their customers. So any solution for directory listing management has to handle all aspects of distribution, which would include online, print, and directory assistance. So even though how people use search has changed, for a carrier providing service to a business, the traditional model used for publishing can cost a lot of money. And we are long past the days of where carriers owning the listings actually distribute books. So you send your subscriber information to an incumbent carrier who then distributes and sells your data to publish and aggregators. These fees can really add up over time. You can pay a monthly recurring fee from anywhere from $2 to $40 for a billable listing, with a nationwide average being about $5.50. Also, you're likely sending information to multiple carriers, each with their own requirements and rules that really go far beyond just what you need for the publishing process. This creates multiple internal processes, multiple logins, different data formatting requirements, and ultimately a higher error rate. And finally, you are losing control of your authoritative customer data. You are sending it to a competitor. So on the top of the competitors, this is creating an imbalance. You're providing your subscriber data, you're paying them fees, and you're managing to multiple rule sets. A competitor is charging you recurring fees to house your data, and then they generate revenue by reselling your data. The majority of carriers out there are really on the losing end of this model. So what does Neustar provide as a solution? How does our solution work? So once you're live with us, there are multiple means of sending listings to us, and they can be sent through one of our long-standing order management gateways if you're a current customer, or sent through an FTP file. Once in our repository, we're going to distribute it to a variety of different mediums. We'll distribute it to print publishers, and we have relationships with over 150 print publishers nationwide. We will send it out to the Directory Assistance 4011 environment, and then multiple online search engines. And then finally, we also offer an option of providing your own search engine for your customers if that's something that you now want to start providing. So in summary, Neustar can help you significantly reduce your cost. We can provide a single interface and repository and give back control of your data to you. But to go into more detail into each of these areas, I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned in the previous slides, we can significantly reduce your operating expenses for directory listings. However, the first step in achieving this is to gain an understanding of your current spend. When we're out in the marketplace talking to carriers about directory listing service, we have found that carriers typically are not monitoring their DL charges or fees. And in many cases, the carrier's monthly spend or annual spend is virtually unknown. We also know that LEC bills are extremely large and very complex, making them difficult to navigate or identify fees. Carriers often don't have the resources or the time to conduct that cost analysis. Well, that's where Neustar can actually help. Neustar has a team with over 20 years experience in managing directory listings and directory listing invoices. Our teams can assist and provide insight and guidance to help you quantify your overall spend. Once your costs are identified, Neustar will develop a deployment schedule that will focus on the high-cost territories initially. to reduce your spend as quickly as possible and maximize your savings. So for many people, when you talk about directory listings, they assume it's very simplistic, or they think, how difficult can it really be? Well, for all of us on this call right now, we understand how complex it really is, and that there are multiple layers to processing directory listings. So let's talk about those layers. First layer, each carrier itself frequently has multiple internal platforms, whether it be a billing interface or a CRM platform, that their agents have to access to actually create and process a directory listing. As Dave mentioned earlier, each LEC has different portals to submit and access your records. And within each of those portals, there are different format requirements and rules, many of which are highly complex. These complexities and unique rules can often cause high fallout, backlog of records, and delayed processing. But what we've done at Neustar, we've developed one single interface utilizing one simplified format to submit all directory listings. Our format is universally accepted in 411, print, and online. Ultimately, the end result is a significant reduction of fallout, increased productivity, and gained operational efficiencies. Or, as I like to say, less swivel in your swivel chair. At Neustar, we believe your data is your asset. With the legacy industry standard processes, you have no visibility on that path of your data, the path that your data may take, and you have no control on how it's shared or, worse yet, sold. So once an LSR is submitted to the incumbent carrier, your data is being resold to aggregators or direct marketing companies who are using it as a lead gen. This can result in high influx of annoying telemarketing calls to your subscribers, which leads to customers' dissatisfaction. And in some cases, those telemarketing calls, are offering competing products, which could impact your bottom line. At Neustar, we restrict the usage of your data and limit it strictly to print, 411, and online publication only. Our agreements do not allow your data to be resold to any third parties, and in addition, we provide transparency on where and how your data is shared. So we've talked a lot about how our DL management service can reduce your operating expenses, which again, it really is a key driver for for carriers to move to Neustar's directory listing service. But there are also a few ways a carrier can realize additional incremental revenue streams. One feature of our DL service is that we conduct a TN and listing audit. More often than not, when we talk to carriers do not have an embedded base of all their directory listing records that they maintain on an ongoing basis. These audits that we conduct, they can provide the carrier a clean and accurate inventory of all of their directory listing records. In addition, these audits also identify records that are no longer owned but still assigned to the carrier. And what I mean by that is, there are records that were sent to the LEC by the carrier to be deleted. The carrier receives an acknowledgement of the disconnect from the ILEC, but for whatever reason, the record remains assigned to the carrier. And many of these records have MRCs associated with them. Neustar will identify and remove those unowned records and provide a detailed reporting which can be used then to dispute those incorrect past billing. Another benefit is visibility of the unknown ported listing. For example, when a carrier ports in a number and their subscriber wants to keep their directory listing as it is, The carrier then submits a retain as is for that record to the LEC. The DL record remains with the LEC, but the listing detail is not provided then to the carrier. So the carrier has no idea the type of listing it is, nor does it know what MRCs are associated with it. With Neustar's directory listing service, the carrier will now have access to the entire repository. Carriers can then audit their billing records utilizing that repository to ensure all DL costs are passed on to the subscriber accurately, thus mitigating revenue leakage. And then finally, Neustar believes, again, your records are your asset. For any revenue that Neustar garners from licensing your records for publication, Neustar will share 50% of all royalties earned. So I hope what I've shared today gave you a little bit more insight and specific examples of how we have helped our carrier partners with directory listings. We believe that our service provides a more balanced and equitable approach in the marketplace. By allowing an alternative approach to a legacy process, carriers can reduce costs, obtain control of your asset, and drive new revenue to a cost center. Now I'm going to pass it on to Jen, who's going to walk you through the ease of implementation and the overall development steps of our service.
Good afternoon, everyone. So next we wanted to review what to expect when partnering with Neustar from an overall deployment perspective. We often hear clients saying, I understand the value of the solution, but are concerned as to the amount of time, resources, and overall effort to move forward as they don't have their listing records to provide to Neustar. So we wanted to make sure we carved out some time today to review how we address those concerns with our deployment approach. First, we'll review the optimal way to submit directory listings to Neustar that fits best within your ordering process. So instead of sending the listing request to the LEC via LSR processing, the request would be sent to Neustar. And just as Dave mentioned, we do support a variety of ways listings can be sent to us. It could be sent through our GUI, via FTP, API, or processing through our Enhanced Service Request or ESR solution for voice service fulfillment. Once the DL records are being processed by Neustar, we will then begin capturing what we like to call the embedded base of listings. This brings us to number 2, where we'll create your base listing repository by extracting DL records from various data sources. For those companies that do happen to have their listing records, we can include that extract as well, but it's not required. And just as Anne-Marie reviewed, we found even for those companies that do have a repository of listings, it's rarely accurate. And the number one reason we found is that over the years, directory listings were retained as is as part of the number port request when porting NTNs from the LEC, and the listing was simply never captured. Once the embedded base of listings is created, we then remove your listings from the competitive providers. We nickname this the delist activity, where the listing is removed from the LEC's records. Then finally, Neustar will coordinate distribution of your DL information sent to Neustar, which we reviewed in item 1, and the listings we capture when we created the base listing repository, which you see in item 2. As part of the deployment efforts, Neustar will make recommendations and create a project plan to meet your core objectives. And as Dave and Anne-Marie reviewed, we found these to be the core business drivers across our clients: optimizing cost savings, minimize order fallout, and increase efficiency with a unified workflow. There's cost savings associated with the reduction of LEC service charges. These are the non-recurring or NRCs for just sending an LSR order. There's also cost savings associated with chargeable listing types that carry MRCs, or monthly recurring charges. Let's say, for example, you have a non-pub listing type, non-published listing type, and as Dave mentioned, averaging about $5.50. Once you multiply that times X number of listings that you have over X months, it adds up pretty quickly. Actually, for one client I worked with deploying the solution, we found over $55,000 of monthly recurring charges associated with non-pub listings, which we ended up eliminating entirely. Another core business driver is reducing DL order fallout. Once your listings are processed by Neustar, order fallout is minimized as there aren't varying LEC business rules to contend with and different error reasons associated with LSR form and field population. And overall, there's efficiency gains realized with a unified workflow. There's single connectivity processing with Neustar versus the various LECs within your footprint. Now that we've reviewed high-level development scope and core objectives, I thought I'd talk about some of the specific activities at Project Kickoff. We start by analyzing your DL footprint based upon your MPA NXX coverage area. We'll identify the associated publishers, book closing dates, and markets within your footprint, and we'll create a project plan with milestones and implementation dates to meet your core objectives. We will provide you access to our Directory Data Finder application so you could view published close dates and yellow page headings, which is a really useful tool, especially when you have business listing requests to support. We will also provide you access to our Record Finder application so you could view your listing data submitted and listing records extracted when we created that embedded base. Finally, I wanted to give a quick visual of the overall implementation, summarizing what we've reviewed today. So for step 1, directory listings are sent to Neustar for processing. Once again, Neustar supports a variety of ways listings can be sent to us, and we'll review what option best fits within your ordering process. For step 2, we'll create the embedded base of listings by extracting DL records from a variety of data sources. And meanwhile, Neustar coordinates distribution of the DL information sent in Neustar in step 1 and listings we captured when we created the base listing repository from step 2. Revenue share reporting that Anne-Marie mentioned will also be sent. Finally, we're at step 3, where we'll remove your listings from the competitive providers and kick off what we call the delist activities. I hope this gives you a good overview as to what to expect when partnering with Neustar from, again, an overall deployment perspective.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Anne-Marie. So just to summarize, why partner with Neustar? Well, first, experience. We have deployed this solution across numerous carriers, from cable providers to CLECs, across different listing types. We can not only help replace your current process, we have also been leaders in the transition to green initiatives and expanding your deal offerings. Our ability to create end-to-end connections and automation is really unique in the industry. Neustar has a long history of working in the telecommunications environment and processing orders of different types between carriers. Now we've expanded this capability to the publishing environment and to online providers, really seamlessly integrating through the entire system in an efficient manner. And really lastly, and kind of the bottom line, fast and significant return on your investment. We can get you to savings quickly, we can give you control of your data quickly, and we can simplify your processing. I thank everybody today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Maria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to all of our presenters for all of that valuable information. We're now moving to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions, I see a few have already come in. Please submit them through the Q&A chat. So the first question comes from Dale, and he'd like to know, how do you deal with government municipality listings, blue pages? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. We support both residential listings, business listings, as well as government listings. Absolutely. So I don't know if Anne-Marie, if you want to start talking about or mentioning how we started off focusing on residential listings.
Absolutely.
Product.
So when we did first launch the service over 6 years ago, our first few carriers were large MSOs with a very high concentration of residential records. Since launching the service, Neustar has and will continue to do so. We'll continue to invest in the service and enhance our capabilities and broaden our publishing footprint. And by doing that, that's allowed us to expand our offering to the select community, who predominantly services commercial subscribers. We signed our first select over 3 years ago, so we've been effectively managing both residential, business, and government listings with our service ever since.
And if I could just add on also that given the long history we've had working with carriers, and we have hundreds of carriers in our order management platform, we have a lot of experience just through different professional services we've offered in different forms of complex listings. So we do have extensive experience with all forms of listings that we've really been providing to carriers now over the last 10 years.
Great. So the next question is, do we have to be a Neustar customer? What do I have to buy or replace in order to take advantage of this type of service?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. So first, you do not have to be a current Neustar customer. If you are currently a customer of our order management services, specifically our local service request services, we can, of course, provide a very seamless transition where we just become an additional trading partner in addition to the carriers that you're already interfacing with. However, there are multiple ways to deliver your orders to our service. We can deploy the order management services on your behalf, or you can also use alternative means of bulk loads and so on.
Great. And I guess, okay, how is this Neustar service priced, and how long would it be before I start to see my savings? I think that goes toward Anne-Marie.
Well, I can talk about, in terms of how quickly you'll realize the savings, we've been extremely successful with our audits and expediting the disconnects on behalf of our carriers in the initial phases of the deployment. So most, I think, if not all carriers that we've deployed have begun to see their expenses reduced within 60 or 90 days of contract signing.
And in terms of how we price, we do not have a substantial upfront fee associated with this for the migration process. So the idea is that as you utilize more of our service, our fees will be in lockstep with that and as you achieve savings.
Right, and actually I just wanted to throw out from an overall project deployment standpoint, during the project kickoff, we'll review how best to project manage the overall deployment so the client can realize cost savings as quickly as possible. So we do approach each client differently. For example, we were working with a client that we found had a high amount of chargeable listings that shouldn't be retained. There was a vast, like I mentioned earlier, client that had non-published listings. So for those 3 steps I reviewed earlier, we could reorganize those steps a little bit, and perhaps the biggest driver is, hey, I want to blow out those non-published listings as quickly as possible to realize cost savings as quickly as I can. Or we had another client we had worked with last year where the largest bucket of cost savings was to avoid the LEC service order charges, the NRCs for just sending an LSR. So the core business driver there was, I need to stop sending LSRs to the LECs, and I want to start sending my request to Neustar. So that was the largest cost savings item. So we, from a project plan perspective, we made sure that's what we tackled first.
Okay, the next question comes from Ken. Will there be incremental NRC costs associated with the delisting activity?
So there could be. This varies widely. And I assume when the question is geared more to will the actual incumbent be charging those fees. For us, we do not charge a separate fee associated with that. We just charge as listings are moved over to us. It is possible that the incumbent may have a fee associated with this. This is really part of the process that Jen was just talking about, where we really have to sit down with you and map through your current costs and any potential incremental fees that might be under your current ICAs or tariff agreements.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we can take right now. I do see some additional questions in the Q&A, and we'll follow those answers up in a blog, as well as sending them out to our attendees. So thank you very much. And finally, if you have any additional questions for us, please feel free to contact us at cspsolutions@newstar.biz. And thank you very much.